This guy's trying to split this massive granite boulder in half with nothing more than a hammer and 23 nails. I feel like this is a decent analogy for how I feel when I'm mixing a track. Each nail on its own means nothing really compared to this massive granite boulder. But by repeatedly and precisely hitting them on the head, he's able to finally crack it open. And that's a lot like mixing, where a lot of small details add up to make a great sounding record. So here are 23 high-level concepts, aka nails, which if executed on really well, will help you to nail the mix every time. See what I did there? So assuming you know your DAW really well, your room is dialed in with a decent listening environment, you've got good recording technique, production, etc. Let's jump in. Nail number 1, understand how to manipulate frequencies that are already there. This means gaining an intimate understanding of EQ and how it affects your instruments and the relationship between those instruments. You need to understand that it often can be more effective to cut unnecessary frequencies out of instruments or groups of instruments than it is to boost frequencies you want more of. Know what to cut or boost and why. You need to understand that every note played on any given instrument has a fundamental frequency that needs to be controlled to a degree depending on how many other instruments around it share that frequency, and also depending on how dynamic it is. And whenever you hear someone say resonances, that could be referring to the actual fundamental frequencies of a sound, or resonant frequencies that live in the harmonic content above that fundamental. Harmonics and partials are any frequencies that live above the notes being played, aka fundamental frequency in any given sound. And it's the harmonics of those sounds that help us determine whether it's a piano, a bass, a vocal, or a cat. And because our ears are really good at perceiving what the sounds are based on the harmonics, we don't really need that much of the fundamental frequency of the sound all the time. The more consistent you are with training your ears, the more sensitive they'll be at picking up unwanted frequencies, as well as determining how much of the actual fundamental is needed compared to its harmonics. Nail number 2, understand how to add harmonic content when necessary. I just touched on what harmonic frequencies are, and understanding how to introduce new harmonics and sounds that weren't there in the first place can help enhance perceived loudness and presence while retaining headroom and oftentimes even gaining headroom. Tools like FabFilter Saturn, Oxford Inflator, Decapitator, or tape emulation, when blended in with the original sounds, can allow them to better cut through a mix without sounding too harsh or brittle. Here we have a pure 250 Hertz sine wave. So that's our fundamental frequency. And I'll add saturation. I've got this drive knob all the way cranked up on Saturn 2 by FabFilter, and watch how it introduces these additional harmonic frequencies. And then here's the Magna BB Tubes by Waves. So you can hear that they're different. And because of the Fletcher-Munson curve, these frequencies are what our ears are most sensitive to, between around that 1 to 3K range. And that's why adding saturation can add sort of perceived loudness, because it's adding those frequencies and introducing new harmonic content in that area of the frequency spectrum that our ears are most sensitive to. Nail number 3, how to narrow the dynamic range of a sound. The more we stabilize and control the dynamic range of a sound and groups of sounds, the better we can control their placement in the mix, and the better our mix will be prepared for mastering. Take the time to experiment with and understand the differences between compression, clipping, and limiting, and know all the ways in which you can control dynamics with those tools. In your tracks, you'll find peaks and transients. Peaks are the very loudest points of audio in your tracks, groups of tracks, or entire song. And ultimately, peaks prevent loudness. Those peaks can be caused by rogue spikes from instruments or groups of instruments, improper volume balance, as well as frequency buildup from clashing sounds. Understanding how to narrow the dynamic range of any sound or group will give you greater control over the front to back placement of those sounds in a mix. If you want to learn more about this in detail, go watch Jake's compression video linked in the description below. Nail number 4, is understand how to manipulate the transients of a sound. Just Google the Best Transient Shapers 2023 guide and you'll find more than enough options for plugins to help you alter the attack and release of a sound. Transient shapers are just one way in which you can do this. If used in the right way, compression can add or take away the punch of a sound as well as change its release or decay time. And when I say compression, I mean any form of compression, either compressors, limiting, or clipping. Knowing how to manipulate the transients of a sound can help you shape its character in the way that you want and help place them at varying degrees of depth in a mix. I'll explain this in more detail a bit later. Nail number 5, understand how to manage harshness. This one is important. A lot of mixes I hear from engineers that are starting out sound harsh and brittle. Oftentimes, it's a byproduct of your room and poorly recorded or overly compressed cymbals that clash with undealt harshness in a vocal. Harshness can exist anywhere from 3K and above, but more often than not, it's around the 4 to 9K range with vocals, guitars, cymbals, synths. Also, it can simply come from an attempt to bring out clarity and presence in a mix. Remember the point that we made from the first nail about cutting frequencies rather than boosting? Experiment with cutting away at the 150 to 400 hertz range in a sound and notice how the high-end frequencies and presence come to life more without having to boost them nearly as much, or sometimes at all. Nail number 6, understand sonic relationships from managing lows, mids, and highs. Understanding sonic relationships exists in 2 parts. The first is understanding and managing the relationship of frequencies between different instruments. This has to do with frequency masking, where one set of frequencies in, let's say, a piano could easily step on and clash with the resonant frequencies of a vocal. Another example is the overlap of low-end frequencies between kick and bass, and another can be found in the sibilance of vocals clashing with the 7 to 9K range of hi-hats. There are plenty of other examples, but the point is to understand the concept that instruments will share frequencies which, if left to their own devices, will often create excessive resonances that are unpleasant to the ear. Your first line of defense in mitigating this actually comes in the writing and production stage. Really experienced producers and songwriters select sounds and instruments which separate themselves from each other because of their naturally occurring frequencies. They also will often ensure that instruments and sounds come in and out of the production in an economical way. For example, one of the best ways to separate kick and bass frequencies is to simply not have them play at the same time. Not all of your frequencies and sounds need to be playing at the same exact time to create the perception of filling up the frequency spectrum. So here I have a standard 4-on-the-floor kick drum. And here I have my bass line. And notice how if I put these right next to each other, they occur at different times other than the downbeat, so they're syncopated. So together, we have that separation, and those low-end frequencies are not overlapping. The second part of this has to do with frequency masking that occurs within a single instrument or sound. If you remember from nail number 5, I mentioned how cutting frequencies in the low mids can cause other frequencies in the upper mids and highs to reveal themselves more clearly. This is because having too much of any frequency will consequently mask other frequencies on the other end of the spectrum. Nail number 7, understand how to create depth in your mix. If you understand how to create depth in your mix, this will really separate you as a pro mixer. Depth comes from your ability to separate and place sounds in the front to back dimensions of your mix. There are 4 main ways which you can do this. The first and most simple is volume. It might seem like the obvious, but sounds that are louder will typically feel more upfront than sounds that are quieter. This is why a vocal that is all over the place dynamically can sound sort of karaoke-ish, like it doesn't belong with the music. The volume jumps up and comes way too up front, then dips down in volume and gets pulled back in the mix, and then it's just right, but then gets sucked back and then pushed forward. If you can learn how to dynamically control your instruments really well using compression, limiting, volume, and gain automation, it'll help you anchor sounds and stagger them however you want in that front to back dimension. The second way to control the front to back placement of your sounds is by manipulating their transients. Giving a sound more transient punch can cause it to feel more up front than one that has a more gentle, smooth, and round transient. This is where compressors, transient shapers, and volume shapers can help. A faster attack on a compressor can round off or soften transients, causing them to feel more distant. And a slower attack can bring a sound more up front in the mix. The third way to affect front-to-back placement is with delay and reverb. Longer reverb decay and delay times can cause sounds to appear further away than ones with shorter times. Now, a shorter decay time with more reverb effect will sound further away. Than a longer decay time with less reverb effect. Essentially, a more wet reverb effect will cause the dry sound to hit our ears around the same time that the reverb sound does, which makes it seem more distant. You can also have a longer decay time with a pre-delay, which can make sounds feel like they're up closer, but still in a large space. Also, take some time to understand how early versus late reflections affect the front to back movement of sounds. This can take your reverb skill to the next level. And the fourth way to affect the front to back dimension is with EQ. As sounds get further away, they naturally get darker. So, brightening up sounds with EQ can bring them more up front and vice versa. You can also do this with your reverbs and delays. What we're simply doing here is trying to mimic how sounds are in nature. That's how you can really create an immersive experience for the listener. Nail number 8, understand how to create width in your mix. In summary, you need to create contrast. The idea of contrast can be applied to so many different aspects of a great mix. After all, by definition, stereo only occurs when we introduce contrast between the left and right channels. This can be contrast in both timing and pitch variation, but your very first stage for achieving width, before you put any effects on, should happen in the initial volume and panning phase, where you can pan similar instruments hard left and hard right from each other. If done right, this can give you as much as 80% or more of the width in your mix. One common and effective approach for achieving width via contrast is to leave a mix more in the center and narrower during an intro or verse, and then pan things out hard left and right in the chorus, and you'll make that chorus stand out and feel much more wide and huge. Beyond this point, you're left with using simple time and pitch-based effects like reverb, delay, chorus, etc. Chorusing introduces contrast between the left and right channels by making at least one copy of the signal on one side and then modulating the timing and pitch of one or more of those copies on the opposite side. Here we have a stock Logic chorus with the intensity modulating the pitch all the way up and then the mix all the way up so we can hear just this effect. And notice how it's creating contrast in the left and right with that pitch. It's going as much as a major third up and down in both left and right ears, but it's doing that in opposite directions. And if I take this down, you can hear that the intensity, in other words, the level of pitch modulation goes down. And then we blend that into taste. Here's off. So you can hear how our ears are pulled out to the left and right sides because of that modulation of that pitch in that chorus. This same effect occurs naturally in doubled vocals or doubled anything. The great thing about being human is that we're simply incapable of reproducing the same exact pitch and timing of our previous takes. And because of this, panning a doubled vocal or guitar or anything hard to one side and the original to the other will give you that width which comes from chorusing. What's happening is that the subtle differences in timing and pitch pull our ears to opposite sides, creating the perception of width. Chorusing is one of the quickest and simplest ways to add both width and depth to a track. But we're not going to achieve that width if we don't contrast it with sounds that exist right down the center or even somewhere in between. Besides, having a chorus effect on every single track will probably introduce some phasing issues and maybe even seasickness. Other time-based effects like reverb and delay help add varying degrees of width to your mix depending on the type of reverb or delay. A ping pong delay is, in my opinion, one of the greatest delay choices for enhancing the width of any track because each delay repeat goes back and forth and alternates between hard left and hard right channels.
So please tell me lies so I don't have. So please tell me lies so I don't have to go to bed at night.
With the appropriate delay time and mix between wet and dry, this can be super effective for adding width to mono sounds or even widen stereo sounds even further. Nail number 9, understand how to maintain objectivity. This is fairly straightforward but powerful if adopted as soon as possible. There are 3 ways that I want to discuss to maintain objectivity. The first is speed and intention. This is simple. When working at a faster pace, you're less likely to get caught up in overthinking or second-guessing your decisions. It allows you to rely more on your instinct and initial impressions, reducing the chance of subjective biases creeping in. Having a clear intention or goal in mind while mixing can also help you stay focused and objective. Know your tools. The faster you can work your way around your DAW and tools, the quicker you can execute on any goal and stay creative. Do not underestimate the power of knowing your tools. The worst thing you can do is buy more plugins when you haven't mastered the ones you already have. We're all guilty of this, including myself. Taking the time to dig deep into your tools will make you a super producer and engineer. Read the manual in addition to experimentation and exploration. Also, get to know your frequencies. The better you know your frequencies, the faster and more intentional you can be at identifying and solving problems and remain objective. When you have a specific vision for the final sound you want to achieve, it becomes easier to assess whether your mix is aligning with that objective or not. By combining speed and intention, you can avoid getting trapped in a cycle of endless wandering and aimless decision-making. The second way to remain objective is by using reference tracks. Using reference tracks effectively during the mixing process gives you a target to aim for both sonically and dynamically. Having this target gives you a destination throughout the entire process, which can anchor your decision-making. We have both a PDF document you can download and an in-depth video which guides you through the process of setting up and utilizing references effectively. The link to that will be in the description below. The third way to remain objective is by taking frequent breaks. And by breaks, I mean literally walking away from your studio. You'll be the one to decide how many and how frequent your breaks are. This is good for your ears and your back. You'd be surprised how even 5 minutes outside the studio can reset your hearing and help you maintain objectivity in your mixes. My suggestion, if you need one, is to take at least a 5-minute break every hour. Set a timer as a reminder to do so. Go for a walk, listen to music in another room, or sit in complete silence outside your studio. Nail number 10, understand how to mix creatively. This is accomplished in 2 ways. First is by mastering nail number 9. In reality, the whole purpose for mastering the objective side of mixing is to allow the brain to mix freely and creatively. The second and very important way to mix creatively is to do session prep in a completely different time frame. Take the time to organize your session before you actually start mixing. Get your instruments and tracks labeled, grouped, and routed from top to bottom in the order you like to prioritize them. Color code them to easily find them, take care of any fades, crossfades, and unnecessary audio like pops, clicks, artifacts, etc. Take care of phase relationships between kick and bass, as well as any other multi-mic'd drums or other instruments. You can even take it a step further and do initial clip gain and volume automation with really dynamic instruments such as vocals. Nail number 11, understand the importance of dynamics and movement in your mix. Mix engineers who understand this concept separate themselves from the pack. Those that go the extra mile with dynamics and movement in a song will create a truly immersive journey for the listener. This is all about emotional impact. Remember, there's only so much that you can do in a mix to create dynamic and movement in a song that doesn't already have dynamic and movement in the arrangement and production. For the purposes of this nail, we'll focus on how to create dynamic and movement specifically in the mix. For me personally, dynamic and movement boils down to the idea of creating contrast within the 3 dimensions of the cube. By the end of this video, you'll probably have heard me say the word contrast more than a few times. In nail number 7 and 8, we discussed the width, left to right, and depth, front to back dimensions in a mix. The top to bottom dimension has to do with frequency distribution. Lower frequencies appear lower than higher frequencies in this dimension. Knowing all the ways that we can affect the placement of sounds within these 3 dimensions is the starting place for being able to create the journey for the listener we mentioned earlier. From there, the key to creating movement and dynamics is through automation. By automating parameters such as volume, panning, reverb, delay, and other effects, you can add movement and depth to different sections of the song, enhancing the overall listening experience. For example, you can create more impact in your chorus by automating the volume of your instruments and vocals to come up from the verse to the chorus. Additionally, automating effects like reverb and delay can add more interest and movement to the space and depth dimension. For whatever reason, in the beginning of my journey as a producer and engineer, I was really timid about automating anything more than volume. I want to give you permission and encourage you to go the extra mile with automating anything and everything. If your effects allow it, automate it. Of course, only if it serves the mix and the artist's vision. Nail number 12, understand the right kind of listening. When it comes down to it, there are really 2 types of listening. One is subjective and the other is objective. If we consider those 2 as opposite ends of a sliding scale, mixing falls somewhere in between, with mastering leaning more heavily towards the objective side and production leaning more towards the subjective and creative. It doesn't mean that mastering can't be creative. It just means that as an engineer, you should be able to translate subjective problems and goals into objective frequency and dynamic information. For example, words like muddy, harsh, punchy, thin, clarity, etc. can be translated to objective frequencies within a particular mix or master. To ensure accuracy, mastering engineers possess a finely tuned and discerning ear, in addition to an equally tuned room, enabling them to perceive subtle nuances, tonal imbalances, and dynamic irregularities in the mix. Your ability to finish a record is limited to the extent that you're able to listen objectively to precise frequency and dynamic information in the music. This will allow you to quickly solve problems as well as enhance the music. Those that master this objective, more left brain side of engineering through consistent ear training and lots of application will have the pleasure of maintaining speed, perspective, and creative flow. They will have the upper hand at achieving their creative, aka subjective, goals. On the other side of listening, if you're in a purely creative production or writing mode, your ability to focus in and listen for emotion, feel, vibe, and character will help serve you in that creative writing and production process. Learning to listen with those separate hats on is critical for maintaining perspective and making the right decision at the right time. As a mix engineer, the balance tips back and forth between objective and subjective listening. In one moment, you're adding reverb and delay throws to enhance emotion, and the next, you're narrowing in the subtle enhancements with just the right amount of EQ. Both require objective and subjective listening. By actively listening with an analytical mindset, you can make informed decisions and adjustments, ensuring that the final mix achieves its full sonic potential. In summary, The right kind of listening has to come through thousands of hours of practice and application in the real world. The best thing you can do is get a hold of as much production, mixing, and mastering work, particularly in the genres you prefer, as early as possible. Nail number 13, understand the importance of workflow. The importance of workflow in mixing cannot be overstated. Having a streamlined and efficient workflow is the foundation upon which a successful mix is built. A well-planned workflow ensures that you can navigate through a session quickly and seamlessly, keeping focused and making informed decisions without getting overwhelmed or lost and scratching your head as to what to do next. It's anchored in following a repeatable system which makes the mixing process more intuitive, productive, and creative. If your goal is to bring out the intended emotion and impact of the music, then don't overlook workflow. I would bet that 99.9% of professionals utilize some kind of workflow that allows them to get the most out of their time and energy spent in every mix. Nail number 14, understand time management. This is about avoiding the trap of zooming in too close to something at the wrong time. Time management is crucial. You have to exercise caution not to rabbit hole down something at the wrong time. It's easy to become engrossed in minute details, obsessing over individual tracks or effects processing while losing sight of the bigger picture. In the pursuit of sonic perfection, you may find yourself spending an excessive amount of time on a specific element, detracting from the overall progress of the mix. It is essential to maintain a balanced perspective and allocate time wisely. Rabbit holing down a specific element too early can impede progress, causing unnecessary delays. Time management requires discipline and attention to the right elements at the appropriate stages of the process. Getting nail number 13 down will help you with nail number 14. Experiment with setting timers for specific aspects of the mix. For instance, you can spend 20 to 30 minutes organizing the session, 30 minutes to an hour cleaning up with edits, and 30 minutes getting a really strong static volume and panning balance. Nail number 15, understand mixing with emotion in mind. So what's the point of all these nails? At the end of the day, we're creating art. And in my strong opinion, all art should make us feel something. Pretty much everything that we're talking about in this video is to help serve you in enhancing that feeling or feelings for the listener. A true master of their craft will mix with emotion in mind. Any intricate technical details added are really there to support the intended emotion of the music. To achieve this, you need to approach the process with an understanding of the emotional narrative and artistic vision. For specifics on how to do this, you can refer to nails 10, 11, and 12, but I also just think this topic deserves an entire video on its own. Nail number 16, understanding context. We've all asked a professional at some point, how do I EQ a vocal or a bass or a kick, and receive the disappointing answer, it depends. The only things in engineering that are constant are the high-level concepts and principles, but the strategies for executing on those are highly contextual and dependent on one's personal taste. And truthfully, that applies to just about everything in mixing. Not every detail of a mix is going to be exactly the same. In a mix, doing only what is needed and even knowing when to do nothing at all to a sound is truly the sign of a refined ear. It requires a holistic comprehension of the song's genre, style, and intended audience. Yielding your decisions to context will inform the appropriate techniques, processing, amount of processing, and sonic elements to use. The focus should be on doing what is truly necessary to serve the song's vision and enhance its impact. If you truly gain an intimate understanding of the fundamental concepts and tools in mixing, volume, EQ, compression, spatial processing, you can break whatever rules you want to serve either your own or the artist's artistic taste.
I wish that advice was more broad. I feel like everybody's career in the same field is so weirdly different that I could give advice that worked well for me that would be the wrong advice for somebody else, which is just sort of par for the course. And I feel like you watch these sort of like seminars at Berkeley or whatever, and people say like one thing and it's applicable for some people and not others. So with that grain of salt, the thing that I would say that I thought was very profound when I heard it was a mastering engineer when I was like 13, who was like a friend's dad, I called him and was like, how do I make my song loud? Which is such a thing you say when you're first figuring out how to learn how to produce music. And he told me about like limiters. I didn't know what a limiter was. And then he said, listen, it's really important that you understand the delineation between the correct way to do something and whether you like it or not. He was like, everyone in the music world is going to tell you why you did something incorrectly. There's, oh, that's too loud. That's too this. That's too this. And he was like, it's really important to like something or not like it, because your taste is what really matters. And it's also going to be your greatest defense. If somebody goes, oh, the vocal's too compressed. That's true if you don't like the way it sounds. That might be the reason. But if you go, no, I compressed it that way on purpose. I like it. Even if it was an accident, if you like how it sounds, then it's the correct way, because taste is everything. So I remember that being very profound.
Nail number 17, understand mastering or end in mind approach to mixing. Mixing a song without having an end in mind is in a way like embarking on a road trip without a destination. Sure, you might make some discoveries along the way, but you may find yourself driving aimlessly, getting lost in the vast expanse of musical possibilities, and ultimately never arriving at a destination. But having a clear end in mind can act like your GPS. In other words, understanding the mastering process intimately will help guide you through the twists and turns of the mixing process, and even all the way back to production and recording. And I'm going to put in a completely shameless plug here. This is the core concept and philosophy for our program, The Reverse Engineer. By taking a deep dive and teaching the final process first, our students gain mastery over the fundamentals of volume, EQ, and compression. It's like plotting your sonic route on a map, ensuring that you stay on track and reach your desired destination. With an understanding and ear for what a finished record sounds like sonically and dynamically, our students can make intentional decisions that allow total creative and technical freedom for their mixes. Nail number 18, understand attention to details. Attention to detail when mixing is so important. The longer you work at the craft, the more details you'll find yourself paying attention to. What we're doing is meticulously crafting a fine piece of art where every brushstroke and color choice matters. The details in a mix are the building blocks that shape the sonic landscape, and it's the culminative effect of those intricacies that can make or break the listening experience. Paying attention to details involves scrutinizing every aspect of the mix, from the precise placement of instruments in the stereo field to the seamless transitions between sections. It means meticulously fine-tuning the dynamics, EQ, and any effects processing to ensure each element shines in its own space, while complementing the whole. Furthermore, it involves identifying and rectifying any imperfections such as clicks, pops, or unwanted noise that might distract the listener. The dedication to these details demonstrates a commitment to the craftsmanship and mastery. By investing time and effort into perfecting the finer points, you can create a sonic masterpiece that captivates the audience, evokes emotions, and stands the test of time. In the end, it's the attention to detail that elevates a mix from good to extraordinary, leaving a lasting impression on the listener.
Kendrick is an artist with something to say and has control and input from the beginning to the very last minute before we deliver masters. And it's a beautiful thing to see. They're really attention to detail oriented folks, and it shows.
Nail number 19, being consistent. Working on your craft daily is critical for continuous growth and mastery of the art. Just like any skill, it simply takes time and consistent input to hone and perfect that skill. By dedicating time every day to mixing, you develop a deep familiarity with your tools, process, and sonic palette. Regular real-world practice strengthens your critical listening skills and instincts, enabling you to discern subtle nuances, identify areas of improvement, and make informed decisions during the mixing process. Additionally, working on your craft daily fosters a sense of discipline, commitment, and perseverance, which are invaluable traits for professional success. Pros are working at their craft as much as 12 hours or more every day. The cumulative effect of daily practice gradually enhances your expertise, allowing you to tackle complex mixing challenges without second-guessing yourself. A few hours of focused learning and application per day will yield much better results in your skill than doing several hours only a couple days a week. Nail number 20, understand how to use references properly. Okay, just go see Rob's video on how to do this. The link for that is in the description below, and the title of the video is "This is the Key to Great Mixes." Nail number 21, trusting your listening environment. If I had to make a top 3 list for most important studio gear, your room and listening environment comes in close second, next to your ears. Building a listening environment that you can trust serves as the very foundation for accurate decision making. Trying to finish a mix without it is like a surgeon practicing on patients with anything less than 20/20 vision. The listening environment, including the acoustics of the room and the quality of the monitoring system, directly impacts how we perceive and interpret sound. It is the very last filter in the signal chain before hitting our ears. This is the reason we dedicate an entire week to helping and mentoring our students through fine-tuning their listening environments. And because it's somewhat amorphous, it doesn't get a lot of the attention it deserves on the internet. An accurate, tuned listening environment allows us to make informed judgments about levels, balances, tonal shaping, and spatial placement within the mix. Simply put, if your room adds or takes away volume to any frequency or adds decay time to any frequency, your chances of getting a mix to translate to different playback systems goes down. When we trust what we hear, we can confidently adjust and fine-tune elements without second guessing. Additionally, a reliable listening environment allows us to effectively address technical issues, such as frequency buildup or masking. By developing trust in our listening environment, we gain the ability to make precise, intentional, and impactful decisions, resulting in mixes that translate accurately and sound great on a wide range of systems. Nail number 22, understand the importance of having an open mind. Having an open mind when mixing is essential for nurturing creativity and achieving the best possible result. It allows you to approach the music with curiosity, receptiveness, and a willingness to explore new ideas. An open mind encourages experimentation, pushing the boundaries of conventional mixing techniques and encouraging the discovery of unique sonic possibilities. It enables the mix engineer to consider different perspectives. By embracing diverse influences and musical genres, an open mind encourages the integration of fresh elements into the mix, resulting in a unique sonic signature. Moreover, an open mind promotes adaptability, enabling you to adapt to changing circumstances, unexpected challenges, and evolving artistic visions. Ultimately, an open mind is a gateway to artistic growth, pushing you to constantly learn, evolve, and refine your craft, resulting in mixes that are dynamic, compelling, and true to the spirit of the music. Finally, nail number 23, embracing mistakes and imperfections. Embracing mistakes and imperfections is vital in the journey of becoming a professional mix engineer. The idea is to fail hard and fast in the beginning. While the pursuit of technical precision is crucial, it is through mistakes and imperfections early on that true growth and innovation emerge. Mistakes offer valuable learning opportunities, allowing us to explore different approaches, experiment with new techniques, and develop our own unique style. They push us to think outside the box and challenge conventional norms, fostering creativity and innovation in our mixes. Mistakes teach us humility and resilience, reminding us that the pursuit of perfection is an ongoing process rather than an endpoint. It is in the acceptance of imperfections that we find authenticity and character in our mixes, infusing them with a human touch. By embracing this concept, we cultivate a mindset of continuous improvement, constantly refining our skills and striving for excellence. There you have it. That's 23 nails that if you nail down in your process will help you achieve great results in your work. And I know that we covered a lot here, but I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I would say that one of the most important nails I've discussed today is that of nail number 19, where I talk about consistency. It should go without saying that consistently working at your craft on a daily basis is critical for success in any field. But if you pair consistency with some real focus and guidance, it can dramatically save you time on your journey to professionalism. To help you focus your efforts and stay consistent, there's a video where I talk about a very important habit that every engineer should develop. And I break down that habit in great detail. That video should pop up on your screen now, so click on that and we'll see you on the next one.